putting all this stuff in context, we've been working collar sleeve guard, and so the whole idea with collar sleeve guard is we're obviously trying to attack the upper body, and a common response off of trying to attack the upper body from the person on top is they bring this knee to their elbow so that they basically make it very hard for us to actually attack their upper body. But because of this response here, what I can actually look at doing now is attaching to their lower body. So I can make a de la Riva hook. We have our overhead sweeps. We can use the overhead sweep to come back to the omoplata, but now we're going to branch out into some de la Riva guard, specifically the single leg attacks. So I let go of the sleeve, I switch to this ankle grip, and so we now have collar and ankle de la Riva guard. And the next thing we're looking at is working our seated guard attacks. Now, a very common response from here is our opponent looks to control this leg. And their goal here, obviously once they clear this de la Riva hook, is to step over this leg into a headquarters position. And this is where they can smash past a knee cut, etc. So if I catch onto this quite early, as I feel my opponent grab my shin, I'm going to actually I'm going to switch from the collar to the sleeve, reaching for the sleeve grip here. And I'm going to look at stripping the sleeve grip by kicking my foot past his armpit and pulling the sleeve towards me. So they're going in opposing directions. So I've got this sleeve grip, I kick forwards as I pull the sleeve towards me. Now that I have this ankle and sleeve de la Riva guard, what I'm looking at doing is transitioning to a seated guard position. Before going to the seated guard though, I wanted to give you guys a quick little sweep to initiate the seated guard sequence. So what we looked at was stepping on the knee, kicking the leg out, coming to a seated position. The whole idea here was we were looking at lifting this foot off the floor and basically forcing our opponent to try and base out with this hand. Because we're going to be looking at tipping them over, they're going to feel the need to base this hand out. But because we have the sleeve, we're actually going to stop them from basing. So as I start to kick, as I start to tilt my body over towards my right side, I'm actually picking this foot up off the floor. As he's about to post, I pull the post out. And now keeping all my grips, I just retract my bottom leg, the leg that initially kicks out the foot. As I come on top for my sweep, this is where I can start to hug my opponent's head and look at passing either to side control and mount. So what we're up to today, and this is actually what we covered last night, was when we find ourselves in a position where we widen our opponent's base. And what happens here is, as I try and tilt my opponent over, maybe my opponent does a very good job in keeping stable and not letting me create a dip in the shoulder. And so it's very hard for me to take him all the way over to this side. So now I'm going to use this response to segue into this seated guard grip. Now, a common thing that happens here is the whole idea behind this seated guard sequence is people look at going 2-on-1, making a sleeve grip with the other hand, grabbing the collar or the upper back and sweeping over in this direction. But the issue is it's very hard for us to actually make a nice little cuff grip with this free hand. It's okay for this hand because I've already got the grip, but for this hand it can be quite tricky. So what can happen here is as I'm kind of fumbling for the grip, my opponent can actually rip the sleeve grip out. Okay, and now I'm just stuck with like a very standard seated guard. And he now has both his hands to address my guard and potentially work a pass. So the quick fix for this is instead of going for this 2-on-1 straight away, we're going to look at making this figure 4 grip, like so. And now what we're going to be looking at from here is some attacks from this figure 4 grip. So we're not going to go to this double sleeve just yet, we're just going to use this figure 4 grip. So the first response we looked at was when our opponent starts to try and rip his hand out, okay? Because I've got this figure 4 grip, I can actually hold onto the grip. It's a much stronger grip than before. And so as he starts to rip his hand out, he actually like postures up like this, okay? And the reason why this is so significant is because this is actually going to help me come up for a single leg takedown. Notice how before, when he was bent over, if I tried to come up for a single leg now, because he's bent over, he can still drive his weight into me, like this, yeah. So instead, I tried to time this with him trying to rip the sleeve grip out. And when this happens, most of the weight goes into this far leg, and he doesn't get that same kind of drive, like this bend in this knee driving his knee into my chest, getting all this forward pressure. Instead, he's actually going to be kind of putting his weight more so on this leg. And so as this happens, as he starts to pull up like this, I'm going to take my foot off his knee, bring it behind, and I'm going to like really think of taking my chest over this front shin, like so. My head is driving into like the inner aspect, or more so the front of his torso, as I stand up completely. Now all we looked at from here was a really basic finish for this like single leg takedown. I'm going to step my foot close to his foot, and then I'm going to pivot my other foot almost behind this foot as I drive my head into his torso, and I apply like a downwards pressure with my chest onto his thigh and his knee. Now we're finishing in like a sweeping position. Sorry, in a passing position. So I'm just going to get you guys to recap this one now, and then we're going to go into a few other responses. So we're starting off collar sleeve, make them go elbow to knee, go to the De La Riva guard. They're going to try and push this leg down. We're going to grab the sleeve, kick it out. Initially, I'm kind of hooking at his ribs here, at his lower ribs and his hip. And then when I'm ready to sit up, I'm going to start to kick this leg out. Try and go for this first sweep. They're going to pull back. And then we switch to our figure four. As they try and rip the sleeve, rip it up, we come up. And then we're ready to finish our takedown. 1. Any questions so far? All right, let's go. 2, 3. The response where we've locked up this figure four grip and we're very glued to the inside of the thigh. We looked at the response where if our opponent postures up and they actually give us room to get up, we can look at this takedown. One thing to note here as well, you guys can play around with which leg you decide to get up with. You can theoretically get up with this leg as well. I just feel like I have more support if I get up on this side, especially with these grips. So now the next response we're going to look at is, instead of our opponent posturing up like this, they're going to stay low and actually going to try and drive us down to the mat, like so. Now, in theory, if I knock him over to this far side, I could potentially sweep him, but it's actually quite hard because it's hard for me to generate much force from here. If I try and bump him forwards, he can usually base with not so much this hand. I mean, this would be good for us if he puts this hand on the floor, but I'm also using his outside foot. So if I try and kick him forwards, he can step forwards like this, okay? And if I stay on my back on my side, I'm like basically almost in like a guard pass here, and I have to fish for like a half guard. You want to avoid this idea. So if we find ourselves in a spot where off of this figure four entry with the sleeve grip, if my opponent starts to drive me forward like this, I have to reintroduce some kind of frame first. So let's just turn around to this side so you guys can see. So the reason why he's able to knock me down is because I don't have any frames at the moment. So I'm going to reintroduce a frame momentarily so that I can kind of push him away. But also I'm going to try and use this frame to off-balance him as well. So I'm going to use this foot on his hip, and I'm going to start to kick kind of upwards like this. Okay. Usually what's going to happen is my opponent is going to try and recenter their base, so they're going to kind of like move a bit back, and yeah, and kind of reset their like, I guess, passing sequence. Now this free leg, I actually want to reintroduce this leg as well, so I'm going to make a hook at his hip like this, and this is like an inside De La Riva. Now what I'm going to look at doing from here is I'm going to pull everything in. So I'm going to pull my knees to my chest. I'm going to use this foot to actually step on the floor. I'm going to hit a bridge off of this foot. As I hit this bridge with this foot, I'm going to extend my other leg like this. Now I can't finish the sweep from here still, but what I've done is I've made him put his hand on the floor, or the other response is I will force him to put like step his outside foot outwards really far. But the whole point right now is, at this point here, his hands are on the floor, his weight is forward, and he's not actually facing me anymore. Previously, the initial issue with this was that his hips were facing me. But now his hips aren't facing me, and we're, again, starting to create this perpendicular angle where I can see his back. So once I've hit this bridge and I've kicked him forwards, I'm going to drop this leg down as I kind of like spin towards my side, like this. Can you guys see how this is going to end up? Now what's happening here is I'm starting to create some back exposure. I'm starting to I'm quite low beneath him as well. So this is looking quite bad for him in regards to defending a back take or a single leg sweep from here. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to start to build my base. So I'm going to keep my left foot where it is. I'm going to retract my right foot, like so, and I've built up my base here. Now his sleeve is essentially stuck between his legs, so it's very hard for him to actually regain his posture. So best case scenario for me is I pop up to his back. The other scenario that's likely going to happen is he's going to build his base back up too. He's going to start to turn towards me, and we're back in this single leg position with the sleeve grip. Make sense? First response, they're going up. They're trying to rip the sleeve up and they're actually opening up the sweep for us. Second response, they're coming forwards. They're driving into us. Okay, so we've covered, I guess, two potential responses, up and forwards. Remember, if they go up, single leg straight away. If they start to step forwards and drive us down, toes to the hip, free foot, makes a delicate. Remember, we can use toes in the hip initially to try and off balance, and they're going to be forced to sink their hips back down. And this is where we can bring this foot in. I'm still keeping the grip, my chest is still glued to the knee. Now I'm going to take my initial foot out, my outside foot, I'm going to hit a strong bridge from here. As I hit this bridge, my De La Riva hook extends as I off balance him all the way over my right shoulder. Like this. Now the hook comes out as I start to come on top of it. I'm staying very tight here. Best case scenario, we shoot for the far hip or the far shoulder, and we can start to take the back. If I keep this sleeve grip from here, I can actually just start to take his back from here straight away. Other likely scenario is my opponent explodes up to a standing position and he faces it. So now we're back in this spot as well. Any questions so far?
Are you in any danger of like a knee slice or him passing you in that first position before you get your...
Theoretically, yes, but it should be very hard for him to stabilize because his hand is tucked between his legs.
Yeah.
So unless he can break that grip, it should be very hard for him to stabilize. And even if like he does kind of hunker down with like a knee on belly position, let's say he's like here,
Yeah.
I can always bring this foot back in. And then I can start to initiate the sequence again. I ideally don't want to be here though, where he's cleared my knee line, because here I'm relying on this, like my knee and his butt. So like bring him forwards here. This can obviously work quite well, but what I ideally want is a more reliable frame, which is going to be this. Okay, and then I can start to add this leg in. Any other questions? All right, let's go. 2, 3.
Ankle grip.
Yeah.
Can he get rid of my knee?
Yeah, he can. There is a chance. And so usually what happens, right, is actually, I'll open it to you so you can feel. So when I go from here to the De La Riva, you're straight away, like, it's actually the correct reaction. You're going to try and push this foot off, okay? And so what I have to rely on here is basically figuring out a way of reinserting the hook and then going straight into my attack. Because what can happen here is you can push my foot down and I can bring it back in, or I can pummel my foot quite well and bring it back in. But if I stay here for too long, you're going to push it down again. And so this is the, I guess, like the fight that happens with De La Riva. So there's pretty much just two things going on in regards to what my legs are doing. Jun's going to be trying to push this leg down, and he's going to try and circle this foot off his shoulder, and he's going to try and put it between his legs or stack me up. So he's going to try and push my foot to the floor over my head like this. So while this is all happening, I have to be really diligent with reinserting my feet into the correct spots. And then the moment I actually get a good, I set a good De La Riva guard and he hasn't been able to clear it, I have to go straight away into my attacks, my transitions. Does that make sense? Yeah. So yes, they can clear your foot. It's up to you whether you're going to try and bring your foot back in and attack straight away, or switch to a different guard. This series is going to be split up into 3 separate instructionals. The first part is going to be on upper body guards, the second part is going to be on lower body guards, and then the third part is going to be the hybrid guards of the upper and lower body. For this instructional that is soon to be released, part 1, which is upper body guards, we're solely looking into the main, most high percentage upper body guards in the gi. So this is going to include our double sleeve guard, our collar sleeve guard, our lasso guard variations, as well as our collar sleeve variations, whether it's a cross collar or a straight collar grip. I've structured this instructional to be very user-friendly and easily digestible for the viewer. My goal for this instructional is to give you guys a sound understanding of all the small little battles that you have to win in order to maintain your guard, off balance from your guard, and obviously successfully attack from your guard. Conversely, I also want to give you guys a sound understanding of what your opponent is trying to do when they're inside your guard, trying to shut down your guard and dismantle your guard. Overall, if you can grasp these ideas, then you'll be able to actually have a sound understanding of how to play open guard in the gi. This instructional will be available at BJJ Fanatics, so if you're interested in purchasing a copy for yourself, make sure to head over to their website.